Excellent. Thank you so very much. So let me just read a little bio about our speaker and that we will give him our undivided attention. Charles Blaine is a writer, political commentator, and public policy consultant based in Houston. His work focuses on the intersection of culture, character, and local governance in shaping institutions and public trust in American communities. Blaine is a contributing writer for City Journal, where he offers a grounded, free market, community-centered perspective on urban policy, civic institutions, and the forces eroding public trust. He is also a regular contributor to the Houston Chronicle, where he writes about ethics, fiscal responsibility, and accountability in local government. His commentary has appeared in outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fox News, and he is a regular panelist on Fox 26 Houston, What's Your Point? And a weekly contributor to several Texas talk radio programs. Blaine founded Urban Reform, an organization dedicated to advancing transparency, accountability, and free market innovation in local government. He also serves on the boards of the Prison Entrepreneurship Program and the Texas Policy Research Foundation and Texas for Reasonable Solutions. Drawing on a decade of experience in public policy, Blaine's work centers on the belief that trust, belonging, and strong local institutions are the bedrock of a healthy democracy. Through his writing, speaking, and advocacy, he aims to spark a renewed appreciation for the power of community and the human connections that sustain it. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Charles Blaine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not a teacher or former teacher, so I can't command a room, so I'm just going to have to beg for your pity in paying attention and following this conversation. But I do appreciate the invite today, and I'm really excited to speak with you guys because I hope my speech will convey the importance of local government to me. I think local government's the most important form of government, and I hope to make that very clear with everything I'm going to say. I didn't know how to open it, and so I have a couple of friends who are associated with or loosely associated adjacent to water boards, and so I kind of ran through some openings, and I kept going back to like the water everywhere line, and they all told me I probably shouldn't do that. And then within the recent few days with the change in the weather, I thought maybe I should talk about how I was going to leave my house today and drip my faucet, and then they told me I probably should not say that either. So staying away from all of those. But I do want to start with a trip that I took a few years ago, and it was a trip to Mexico. And so that's where we're going to begin this conversation. And so it was 2021, and I had never taken a solo trip anywhere, and I decided to go to Monterrey, Mexico. It was close, the flight was cheap, and I figured it would be a good time. It had been a rough couple of months, and so the idea was that I was going to go and kind of find this restoration in the mountains and go hiking and do all this fun stuff, which I did. But being born and raised in New Jersey, North New Jersey, just outside of New York City, I never really spent much time in the mountains or hiking or anything like that, so this was all new to me. Coupled with that trip, though, the goal was also to jump off of Mexico's highest bungee platform, which I did, and I'm very excited to say that was a solid accomplishment. But after a few days of being in Mexico, I accomplished the hike that I wanted to, and I discovered I really loved the outdoors, and I got very ambitious and decided that the next morning I was going to do yet another hike with this group that I somehow found online, and it was going to start at 5 a.m. And so I got up at 5 a.m., went out with this group, and as what happens when you're overly ambitious, somehow midday that day I kind of had this realization that I didn't know what I got myself into when it was about noon, and I'm hanging off the side of like a rock ledge with this group, no gloves, no rock climbing gear or anything like that, off in the outskirts of Monterrey, Mexico, about to rappel down 200 feet. And so it was one of those moments where you kind of pull back and you look above and you wonder how you got there. And so I've had a couple of those, and another one that I'm not going to tell today, but if you guys invite me back next year, maybe I will. But it's about how I ended up in a roadside shootout in Guatemala while trying to hike a volcano. I was not shooting at all. I just ended up there, but would love to tell that story some other time. So we'll leave that story. So as I was getting ready to leave Mexico, heading back to Texas and getting kind of my mind back into the work mode and the real life mode, I was in the Uber on the way to the Monterrey airport, and I decided to start scouring the news, just trying to see what I missed while I was away. And the one thing that kept coming back up, despite all the stuff happening at Harris County Commissioner's Court and Houston City Council and all of that, the story that I kept seeing was City of Houston under boil water notice. It just kept coming up on repeat. And so the sub-headline said, boil before drinking, cooking, bathing, and brushing. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, bathing? You usually hear about the other ones, but I was like, bathing too. And so I remember having really poor service as we're heading to the airport, and I'm trying to pull up the news conference with the mayor and the public works director at the time and other health officials. And I wasn't really getting much because I didn't have great service, but the thing that just kept coming up was the city of Houston, the 4th largest city in the country, under a boil water notice. So then I go on Twitter, and not only was the city under this notice, but people were complaining that it came 9 hours late, and they didn't get any email or text notifications. And they were mad, they were upset, and everyone was shocked and angry and distrustful, and I was kind of shocked too. But the shock only existed because of folks like you in this room. And what I mean by that is, the only reason I was surprised is because, like so many others, my default expectation when I turn on the faucet in my city, in my home, is that it will work. Everything will be fine. There's no question about it, no doubt in my mind. I don't worry about it. They don't worry about it. I don't think about it. I just turn it on. And so does everyone else. And that kind of trust is very rare. And you guys created that trust, and you uphold it every day, and you steward it. I had a mentor named Ross, and so I was glad to hear that Denton County won that award because Ross was from Denton County. And when I first got involved in politics about a decade ago, we used to always talk about local government and finances and transparency and all this stuff, and we'd end up calling each other at 11 o'clock at night, talking about the Houston annual financial report and different things like that, then easily switching conversations to talking about movies and music and things like that. But we would always talk about the importance of local government. Now, Ross fought for transparency in government with more grit than I could ever hope to have. And unfortunately, he's gone now, but one thing that he showed me during his time working with me was that the trust that we find in local governments isn't built by committees necessarily, but it's built by the individuals willing to care deeply about whether systems work at the end of the day. And when no one's watching, they're the ones who stand up and uphold it. And I feel like that's what you guys do. And I was surprised today as I was coming in, meeting so many individuals who I did not know were involved with water districts or water boards that I had previously known or know from other areas. And so it reinforced that idea that individuals work every single day tirelessly and often without the praise that they may deserve just to keep the systems functioning. Now, I don't need to teach you guys about erosion. I think most of you guys, if not all of you guys, know how it works far better than I ever could. And as I was reading, though, it's kind of brief overview that it started small with a little displacement here and there, then runoff concentrates into channels and rills form and gullies, and something structural eventually gives way. I think that's somewhat how it goes. I'm sure someone can and will correct me. But what I've come to realize is that social trust, public trust, the delicate relationship between the public and those who govern us is upheld that same way. The trust that we bestow unto you that upholds our institutions, that keeps society bound together and that undergirds everyday civic life erodes the exact same way. And it might not happen overnight, and it seldom does. It often happens, in these minor decisions or indecisions that are made or not made on a daily basis. The big flash from the pan that we often see on the 5 o'clock news or in the morning paper, that usually comes after these repeated small decisions. It starts with a small lapse here or there. It starts with a complaint that might get dismissed, or relayed communication that might get muddied, a decision that doesn't quite add up, but instead of asking questions, we ignore it or turn a blind eye in hopes that someone else takes care of it. But then no one else takes care of it because everyone else has that same hope. One rill becomes two become a channel, and then before we know it, something structural gives way. But you guys in this room and your colleagues across the state and across the country are the people who watch those reels and catch them before they become gullies, before they become bigger. And most of the time, nobody even knows you did it, because nobody celebrates when the disaster doesn't happen. Nobody gives credit to the crisis that never materializes, because you saw something and you handled it early. And that's the work that it seems that you all live and breathe every day, and that's a burden that you carry so that the rest of us who take advantage and utilize the system don't have to. Now, I ask you guys to think for an instance about a time that your district, your authority, your agency may have had a test of trust, and it doesn't have to be a big test of trust. It could be a very small one, a complaint that may had the potential to spiral into something bigger but didn't, or a miscommunication that you caught in time, or a decision that you made that no one saw, but that kept something else from breaking. Really ask you to think about that just for a second. I can feel you guys thinking this is good, so I'm glad. But that instance, if you can think of one, that's what stewardship looks like. It's the mundane, day-to-day, it's in the quiet, it's the thankless, it's the no pats on the back, no proclamations at City Hall, no buildings named after you, no parades, but it matters more than almost anything in civic life. And I don't want you guys to think that I'm just saying that because of the group that I'm speaking in front of today. There are a few things that I find more important than the importance of public trust at the level in which government interacts in face-to-face with everyday individuals. The Edelman Trust Barometer is a long-running trust survey that's been worldwide, and it's been for about 25 years. And 33,000 people across 28 countries have taken it over the time, and they just released their 2025 findings earlier this week. I think it was on Monday or Tuesday. And I want to share a few of the findings because some of them are alarming, but if you're like me, I think it really helps to clarify mission about what trust and public trust especially can do and what it upholds. Now, globally, only 52% of people trust government according to this year's survey. In the United States specifically, our number is at 47. That's where we sit at on the trust index, and that is firmly in the distrust category. Government is now distrusted in 17 of the 28 countries measured. And what's even more interesting is that when you ask people at the local level, trust in their employer, trust in their institutions at the local level, and the institutions that they interact with face-to-face, day-to-day, those numbers hold stronger. My employer, everyone, when they rated their employer, remained as the highest trusted institution at 75%. And polls have consistently shown that even here in Texas, local government is trusted by folks more than state and federal government. So trust remains local, and that's not me just saying it, that's the data. But what's more critical in the finding from the Edelman Barometer is that 61% of people now hold what Edelman calls the moderate to high grievance against institutions, which is to say that they feel that government and that businesses are out to harm them, that they serve narrow interests, and that it's only the wealthy who benefit while everyone else struggles. 70% now say that government leaders purposely mislead them, and they know that what they are saying is false, and that's up 11 points since 2021, and that's an all-time high. Finally, the most disturbing statistic that came out of this year's survey was that 40% of people globally now approve of what is considered hostile activism, which includes telling disinformation, spreading disinformation, and it also includes threatening or committing violence to get your political outcome. And among those who do think that that kind of political activism is appropriate, 53% of 18 to 34-year-olds believe that that is the way to make political change. And I really want you to think about that because it's 53%, more than half of the next generation believes that hostile activism, violence, is the way to spark political change. And that explains why we see so many of the instances of violence that we see today, where people can't resort to having conversations and debate and dialogue, but rather resort to violence to get their way. It's because this is a growing feeling. And unfortunately, that's the environment that many of you are operating in a day-to-day basis, because you guys are at the level where this is met face-to-face. And that's the erosion that has happened elsewhere, and it's your job to make sure that that does not happen here. That is a burden that you guys carry, unfortunately, but it's because you guys are the ones who are upholding this trust for all the levels of government that have allowed it to erode every single day. When public trust erodes at the local level, it actually matters because the consequences they're not abstract, they're really existential. You know, you take Hurricane Harvey, for instance, and just ahead of the storm, many of you from the Houston area might remember this, but just ahead of the storm, there was a rumor that started, and it was all over Twitter, where it was like, my cousin works for the city, and there was a private meeting, and it's gonna be 14 feet of water, and everybody needs to evacuate now. And this spread like wildfire across Twitter with people believing it. And the reason they believed it, because it wasn't true, I mean, maybe it was, but I highly doubt it was true, that the reason they believed it was because of this random, faceless, anonymous Twitter account that they trusted more than they trusted their official channels of government. They didn't hesitate. People shared this as if it were fact. And when you look at, well, they shared it as if it was fact, but in that case, I do believe that some people probably evacuated who maybe wouldn't have otherwise, and maybe it benefited them. But when you look at the situation as a whole and you think about it working in the reverse, where people don't trust government and maybe should evacuate but don't, the situation can be dire. People can die, and that's just a reality. I think about Hurricane Beryl and Centerpoint, when we went through that process, and that's a clear example of what happens when distrust grows. Power out, there's no available outage tracker letting us know when it's coming back on, officials unable to give us a timeline on power restoration, and resourceful, very resourceful Houstonians using the Whataburger app to determine what areas of town have power. And you know what happened next? I remember watching City Council after that, and there was a visibly angry Councilmember Twyla Carter talking about how she read the news and she saw that line workers who had come to Texas were being threatened because people didn't feel that they could trust the system and they didn't feel as though they were getting the answers that they deserved, so they took it out on the folks who were on the ground. I remember her also being upset because she also read that they were being discouraged from taking water and other things given to them by the public because you could not trust what was in that because of how people were reacting to them. And it's just unbelievable when you think about it, that linemen who came to Texas to help us from other states, left their families to come here to get the power back on, were being treated that way because of distrust that we had for a system. So that's a distinction that I hope you guys hold, is that when trust in the federal government erodes, people can complain on Twitter, they complain on Facebook, they may vote differently, they usually get angry at politicians, but only the ones that they already don't like, but nothing else really happens. But when trust at the local level erodes, when trust in you erodes, people don't heed warnings, people don't evacuate, people threaten the line workers, and people can truly die. That's the difference between federal distrust and local distrust, at least in my opinion. Federal distrust is abstract, local distrust is life and death. Local government can mean life and death. And you guys sit at that interesting fault line where you can make a difference and where you are making a difference. The Edelman data backs this up in another sense, and it says that when trust in institutions is high, grievances dissolve and personal optimism grows. When trust is low, those same grievances fester and outlooks darken, and people start to see their neighbors as their enemies. So people who are even closest to them, working with them, trying to fight for the community that they live in, can be viewed as their own enemy. And among those with high grievances, twice as many hold a zero-sum mindset that they believe that if there's a policy that helps someone who doesn't share their politics, it comes at a cost to them. Meaning that if we help our neighbor and they just don't agree with us politically, it's a cost to us. That is the social contract itself at jeopardy and at risk. And there's a hopeful part there, though, is that it can always be rebuilt. Trust can be rebuilt, and the data shows that local institutions, the ones that you guys sit on, are the ones, obviously, that interact face-to-face, and that is where trust is rebuilt in the day-to-day. They're the ones who are delivering tangible results, the ones that keep the lights on, the water flowing. They're the foundation upon which broader institutional trust can be restored. That means that it's on your backs, and it's not just maintaining infrastructure, it's maintaining the load-bearing walls of civic life. Now, some of you, especially some of the ones I've met today, you might have seen me on TV at various points, and I've often talked about, I find myself criticizing local government a lot, but it's not because I don't like local government or that I think poorly of it, but it's because I do think so highly of it, and I think that we need to be doing better, all of us collectively, citizens and those who govern us alike. I've often talked about leaner operations and ethics and transparency and things like that, and it's because I care and because I understand and believe that that is how you rebuild that trust, and that if you as a citizen call that out and encourage others to do the same, we can see a responsive government. Trust isn't just a reservoir that we fill once and forget about, it's one that we have to keep depositing into. It's one that has to continue to be rebuilt and restored. It's constantly worn away by the daily actions of some or rebuilt by the daily actions of others. Every decision that you make is either one that's depositing into that trust bank or that's withdrawing from it. And so the question that I want to ask you guys is the work that you're doing today, not last year and not in the best moments and not when the lights are on, but today when no one is paying attention, is that building or eroding trust? Are the communications you're sending out clear and intentionally clear? Do they go above and beyond to make what you are doing transparent and engaging for the folks that you're serving? When something goes wrong, do residents find out from you or do they find out from the local news or worse, the Nextdoor app? I really don't like that app. I don't know about you guys, but I know some of you guys really like it, so. But are the operations transparent is really the question. And not just legally compliant, but are we doing what we can to make it visible and tangible to the folks that you guys serve every single day? Are you catching the small issues before they become big ones? And are you letting the rills form because no one's paying attention? And I want you to think, again, I'm going to ask you to think about it in an instance, just humor me. I'm going to ask you to think one more time at the end of this. So, but take a look at your current operations and think about a small issue that you might have noticed that you have yet to address, or maybe you did address it. But truly, it could be a very small issue, and I'm not asking you to think of anything large, just something minor. What's the thing that you've been meaning to get to, but it hasn't risen to a crisis level yet, or a complaint that's just festering that could be sitting there that seems more annoying than anything, but a year down the road could turn into something bigger? And think about 9 to 10 months to 12 months down the road, and what if that does turn into something bigger? What if that is the first crack? And I just say that to encourage you to take all of these issues very seriously, even though there are people like me who often find ourselves at these local government meetings asking far too many questions. And I know you guys get annoyed with us, but some of us have good intentions. The rest of us, I can't speak to the other ones, but we're just trying to fight to make sure that the system is better and that the people that we put in place are upholding the values that they say they will. This could be your opportunity to prevent breakdown if there is something like that exists. Now, say the Edelman research gives a roadmap on how to get to a better place when it comes to trust. When they ask people how they felt or what makes them believe and feel that their government leaders are actually listening to them and that they should be responsive to what the government is demanding of them, and view them as legitimate authorities, they say that there were two answers that topped the list. And one of them was they felt that the decisions that their government entities were making have a positive impact on their life. And then the second one is that they felt that those who were in charge know and understand what people like them needed and wanted. So what that told me is that it's not about ideology and it's not about political affiliation, but it's about the results and the responsiveness of those entities, which makes sense as to why our state and federal entities do not have that same level of trust that we see at the local level. And if there are any state and federal folks, I'm not trying to pick on you, I just really love local government. And so that's why I keep an eye on this. But here's what's fascinating, even among people with high grievance, people who are deeply distrustful of institutions, the expectation is that business and government shouldn't do less. They want them to still do as much, but it's that they should do more and they should just do it better. Majorities across all grievance levels argued that they want business to provide good paying local jobs and to train and reskill workers. And similarly, they talked about how they want their local government entities focused on affordability and clearing up misinformation. So they wanted them more active rather than less, which is what some people would have us believe the opposite of. They don't want you to disappear, they just want more of you to show up. They want you to be transparent and accountable to them, and that's every level of government. but you guys are the only ones who actually interact face-to-face, day-to-day. They want to be shown that through repeated action that the trust that they placed in you guys is justified. And I want to kind of address something directly because I know that in this room there are probably some districts who, or authorities or otherwise, who may serve millions of people, and while others serve hundreds, and some may have budgets that could make a small city cry while others could be operating on shoestrings. And I know that in some of the smaller districts, a thought may have crossed your mind as to whether or not the work that you do matters among the bigger picture. And I know it was mentioned earlier this afternoon. And I often think the same because I focus on local government. So I have a lot of friends and colleagues who are in the political space and focus on the big state, federal and national issues, and they're on CNN and Fox and all this all the time. And it makes me think and wonder sometimes does what I do matter? Is going to a city council meeting or a local board meeting and pushing for transparency, does it matter as much as what they do? I'd argue it does. And I think about that a lot because I think as a nation, and even if we're talking about our local communities, we put so much stock in what happens at the federal and national level that it could seem that what happens at the local level does not matter. But I'll tell you something I learned in prison. Nice transition, right? So as it was previously mentioned, I serve on the board of Prison Entrepreneurship Program, and over the years, I've spent a lot of time in prison talking to guys who are nearing release, and we work with them as they are nearing release 1 to 3 years, but they're going through a character development program where they try to find in them the person that was lost years ago, and they try to restore their character. We work through that, and we work through entrepreneurship development with them, and we spend a lot of time in there talking about trust, a lot of time. And what often comes up is that they are deeply distrustful of people, and it's often because of the things that they've done. And I think when you do distrustful things, you then look at the world as distrustful as well, and it just kind of feeds back into it. But these guys, many of them who have personally been through difficult things and personally have caused difficult things, they tell me that they can't trust anyone. That's what they all say. They're like, I don't trust anyone. And I get it because in prison, trust can be used against you, and it's probably not something you want to give so freely. So I do understand that. But as volunteers, we go in there and we encourage them to think differently. When they get on a bus, but they're not in prison, when they get on a bus, they trust the bus driver. We all do, right? We just trust that we're going to get to our destination safely. When they pick up food in the cafeteria, they trust the person whose hands made it, that they're going to eat that and they'll be fine. When we get on a plane, we trust the pilot without a second thought. We also trust the person who's in that exit row that's not paying attention to the flight attendant. I don't know why, but we do, but we trust them. And even despite all of that, we think that we can't, especially them, they think that they can't trust others, but yet they give so much other trust freely. And that's an interesting thing to me because I often give trust freely in these instances, but at the same time, when I think about this group, and the thought that kept coming back to me when I was kind of preparing for this was that everyone, no matter who you are, where you are, when you turn on the faucet, when you flush the toilet, whatever it is, you have trust that the system is going to work. There's not a second thought about it. You just do it. In most countries. But in Texas, yes, always. And just yesterday, I was at a PEP graduation, Prison Entrepreneurship Program, and the guy who won our annual business plan, I'm not going to say his name, but I'm going to tell a story that he told us. And through the program, they get to create a business, and then they go through, as they're doing character development, it parallels with the entrepreneurship program. So they do these kind of Shark Tank style pitches in front of groups of individuals. And if you guys ever want to volunteer, please come in. But they do these Shark Tank style pitches, and we rate them and rate them and rate them. And at the end, they graduate, and they also get one of them wins. And so the guy who won, he created a crane company. And he was telling us the story during his pitch about how his father was a crane operator, and he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, and he did. He got his crane operator's license, which he told us, which I didn't know, that until 2018 there was no national requirement or national nationwide certification for crane operators. So when they implemented it, his father was already a crane operator, but had to take this test to renew his license. So he worked with his father because his father had learning challenges, and so he created a program to help him get that license. They took it together, they passed, great. Came 5 years later, his father had to renew his license, and this time he couldn't help him because he was incarcerated. So he tried to help him over the phone, walk him through it, tell him what to do. It unfortunately didn't work. His dad did not pass the test. So he had another shot, and he tried again, and he failed. And then the guy told us that on Super Bowl Sunday last year, his father took his life because of not being able to get his license renewed. And what he shared with us was that he felt that he broke that delicate trust that he had with him because he should have been there to support him. And I'm telling you the story because that's the kind of trust that we're talking about. It's not just institutional, it's personal, it's familial. It's the belief that someone will be there when you need them, and it's the belief that things will just work when you need them to work. And when that belief breaks down, when the systems that you rely on fail us at the moments that we're most vulnerable, people don't just lose faith, they lose hope. And when you lose hope, there's really nothing left. And I think that explains why so many people in this trust parameter that I keep speaking about resort to violence or believe that that is the answer. Because when you have hope, you have nothing. And when you don't have hope, you have nothing left. 30 of the men that we saw graduate yesterday in Prison Entrepreneurship Program did not have families who came. Usually they all do, and we go to great lengths to try to get their families to come and see them graduate. Because for a lot of them, this is the first time they've graduated anything in their life. 30 of them, out of the roughly 80 or so, did not have anyone come. And I think it's because a lot of their families have seen it all and heard it all before. The promises, the setbacks, I'm going to never do it again, all that. They've heard it before and didn't want to hear it. And I'm not going to blame them for that. That's their prerogative. But that is what happens when trust erodes. They don't have someone there to support them. These guys who felt that they were finally accomplishing something for the first time in their life did not have anyone there to support them other than a group of volunteers. And that's the reason that it hurts so much. It's because that's a very different type of trust. That's not, I trust my neighbor, but I should probably watch my lawnmower type of trust. That's not, I trust my coworker, but I'm not going to tell him I'm sneaking out of work 15 minutes early kind of trust. That's the, I'm going to pull into this parking lot of the hospital because I know everything's going to be okay type of trust. That's, I'm calling 911 and knowing that help is on the way without a doubt in my mind type of trust. And that's, I'm turning on the sink at 6 a.m. without a second thought in my mind type of trust. And that's not something that we just give freely. Like, yes, we do it when it comes to some of those instances I mentioned before, but that is a deeper level of trust that is there. It's the deepest form of institutional trust that exists in modern day life. And whether you serve 500 or 500,000 people, you hold that trust and you uphold that trust every day with every one of your actions. Texas public trust is a mosaic, and every district is a tile within that mosaic without any tile being less significant than the other. They're all significant because it's water. It touches every household every single day in the most fundamental way possible. A district serving 4,000 people, in my opinion, matters more than many of the larger agencies in this state focused on other things because the thing you provide is the thing that people cannot live without. Now I want to show you something. It's a dashboard I threw together, and it tracks just district data, not just water district data, but special purpose districts stuff, finances, operations, performance metrics. I was really interested while I was downloading, trying to get the speech together. I wanted to learn more. I just wanted to learn more because I've always been very outspoken about local government, but I wanted to learn more about the daily operations and just different things going on. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it's detailed and it can be in depth and it's kind of cut off. It's not the full thing. But you can see how districts compare to others, trends over time, sign up for data updates via email, all this stuff. But I built it quickly using different tools that are available to everyone. And I want to be clear about it. It's not about the technology in particular. It's about making trust visible to those you serve or those you work with, or in my opinion, just in my perspective, just fellow taxpayers. Transparency shouldn't be a burden, and it isn't a burden in my opinion. It isn't a nice to have. It's how you prove every single day that the trust people place in you is justified. And the tools to do it are more accessible than they've ever been. And whether you have a multi-million-dollar budget or whether you're running things out of a church basement, you can put information out there, and you should go out of your way to put information out there that helps people better understand the operations. You can make your operations legible to the people that you serve and make it easy for them to understand And yes, you're still going to have people, some of them like me, who might cause issue and might ask too many questions, but you can alleviate a lot of that by going out of your way to make it easy. And I promise you that a lot of the burden that you face with some of those individuals, the monumental TPIA requests that they submit might go down a little bit if you were to do something like this. Citizens are using different tools every day to increase government transparency and accountability. I was doing some work a couple of weeks ago on a Houston Metro thing and put all this information into one of the AI platforms, and it quickly drew different connections that I never expected it to and showed that there were contracting issues and red flags left and right that you should call out. It's very easy today as a citizen or as a public official to use these tools that are at our disposal to just increase transparency and accountability and help our fellow citizens be more informed about the process. And I encourage every single one of you to do it. And I hope that every other local government, special purpose district or otherwise, does the same, because it's accessible and it's affordable and it's just something that we should all be doing. Now, the question again isn't about whether or not you can afford transparency. The question is whether or not you can afford not to be transparent, particularly in an era where the next generation is looking at the wrong way of holding folks accountable and looking at the wrong way of making political change. In an era where trust is the scarcest resource in civic life. And here's what the last bit of data tells us about why this matters. When people with high grievance look at institutions, their ethics scores collapse. Business in general seen as 81 points less ethical among those with high grievance than among those with low grievance. Government's ethical perception drops by similar margins. But the thing is that perception is malleable and can always be changed, and it responds to actions. The attributes that matter most, being seen as honest and fair, serving the interests of everyone equally rather than just select groups, having a vision for the future that people can believe in, that they can feel, that they can see, that they can touch, that matters to their day-to-day life. And transparency delivers on all three of these. When people can see what you're doing, they stop assuming the worst. When they understand that what your decisions and what goes into making those decisions, they stop suspecting hidden agendas. And when your operations are legible, trust can take root. So here's where we are. I mean, water, I don't have to tell you guys, but water is dominating headlines in Texas and the Texas legislature. Corpus Christi, I see a headline every other day about it facing an 18-month supply crisis. Houston loses 300 billion gallons of water a year. I drive down 59 and I see a water main break every time I pass anywhere. Same thing in Herman Park all the time. Infrastructure is challenged, and there's a big conversation about water. And I think that's going to continue, as you guys can tell me more than I can tell you in the next legislative session. The legislature is paying attention, money is flowing in, and the faucet's about to be turned on even higher with you guys at the center of it all. The ones informing, the ones leading, the ones encouraging Texas to move forward into that next era. Whether you choose to be or not, it's just the way the issue's flowing. Legislative dollars, lobbyist dollars, special interest dollars, public interest is going to be focused on you, the issues you care about, the work that you're doing. They're all coming into water policy, and quite possibly the people in this room are going to be the ones making the decisions, or at least influencing those who make those decisions. But you're definitely on the front lines of that fight, and you've been on the front lines of that fight. And now it's going to be time to put the spotlight on you as you lead Texas into the future. And so with that task, with that charge, with that power that comes with it, I want to issue you guys a challenge. I hope that you guys will be the ones to set the standard. Show the rest of government, Texas statewide, Texas local governments, the nation, show them what officials who get show the officials who get all the attention, show the agencies that typically make the headlines, and show them what public service is truly supposed to look like. Community first, transparency first, accountability without apology. Because you guys have the opportunity right now to become the model for what public officials in this state should be, and you're given a runway to do so before this issue turns its full spotlight on you. And I encourage you to do it, not because you're going to be in the spotlight, because you never needed the spotlight to do the work before. So what are you going to do with that time as we lead up into this next legislative session, where it's going to be on your backs, where you guys are going to be the ones in these committee hearings paving the way for the policy that's going to push Texas forward? I just truly want you guys to think about one thing, one step that you could take this year, one decision you can make, one habit, one tool, whatever it may be, that would make trust stronger in your district. Just think about one thing, that's it. Told you there was one more, think about it. This is it, the last one, I promise. But you guys are truly the stewards of that invisible trust. You're the load-bearing walls of Texas civic life. And you guys are about to be, again, put on those front lines. Well, frankly, you're already on the front lines, but the challenge is just going to get steeper. You're the ones who make it possible for 31 million people across this state to not have to worry about the thing that we need the most. When someone turns on their faucet tomorrow morning, they won't think about you. They won't know your name. They won't know how many hours you spent in board meetings. They won't know about the crisis you might have prevented. They won't know about the decision you agonized over or the fact that you sat in this room or rooms just like it, developing policies that'll lead Texas into the future, making connections that are going to enhance our systems, learning from each other. They won't know any of that. But what they will do is they'll turn on the tap, eyes a little groggy, kids running around in the background, dog at their feet, news on, empty coffee pot in hand, and without so much as a second thought, under the faucet it goes. And everything will be fine. That's the highest form of trust, the kind so deep it doesn't require a second thought. I encourage you to not let that trust erode. You've built it, you steward it, you own it. Thank you for that. And I hope that you guys will take the mantle as you lead Texas into the future. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. No problem.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Charles. I will tell you, your talk really resonated with me, and I'm speaking to the directors in this room because I think trust is so important. And when I talked about evolution of our industry this morning, I thought about, as I sat there, how we have evolved in our emergency preparation and what you directors have approved based on the recommendations of your consultants, so that we get better and better and better with each storm that comes to us, right? Whether you have approved generators, not only at your water plants, but at your wastewater treatment plants, and some of you at your lift stations. Or you have approved winter enclosures with heaters for your water plants, valves, and meters. Or maybe you have fortified your communications with your community. You've built websites with pertinent information. You use texting services and email blasts to make your residents informed and prepared for emergencies. All of those are the result of us going through each of these hurricanes, freezes, tornadoes, any variety of things that we've been through in the last decade. You, directors, have approved those actions, and that is what is making us stronger and a distinctive industry in providing exceptional service to our communities and building that trust. I will also say that we experienced a series of journal articles in the fall that shared misinformation about us, outright lies, in fact. And so in the spring breakfast this year, it'll be a breakfast, not a dinner, but we're going to talk about those articles and the misinformation that was in there, because that erodes public trust, does it not? But we're going to talk about the misinformation. We're going to tell you what is the truth so that you can communicate that with your residents. And then we're going to give us some tools about how we can move forward to combat that in a positive way, sharing our good story. So I'm really looking forward to our spring breakfast, and I hope that you will join us. And now a final reminder, please fill out those surveys. We really do look at those and enact some of your ideas. Please enjoy the coffee break before our next two sessions outside of our seminar rooms. They are sponsored by Civil Grade Engineers, so thank you very much, Civil Grade. I especially enjoy the tea. And thank you all, yes, thank you. And thank you also to Best Trash for sponsoring this morning's breakfast. And to MagnaFlow for the hotel room keys. So the seminar block 3 sessions will begin at 1:45, and I so appreciate you joining us here in Houston, the birthplace of Texas Muds, and I hope that you have a safe travel home to your destination. Thank you.